And so they were the first gamers. They had a hedge fund investing in public game companies. And they were buying so much gold from me that one day they just looked at each other like, this gold business might be a better business than the game business. They started doing further investigation and they found out that all roads led to me. And so they tracked me down through a mutual friend somehow. And so I'm like, guys, we need to buy Mt. Gox. Like, this is, the growth business for us. There's nobody that can promote Bitcoin better than us. We have all the people that buy virtual currency in the world, all the gamers that buy virtual currencies, like they will get this like immediately.
Hi, my name is Jason Raznick, the CEO of Benzinga, and welcome to the Raz Report. As always, before we kick things off, I want to quickly tell you about what Benzinga is. Before I started Benzinga in 2010, there were very few places to get real-time information on financial markets. I thought it was unfair that Wall Street had access to this information before the average Joe investor. So I created Benzinga to level the playing field for you, the retail investor. Benzinga is for the people and by the people. Now, let's dive into the show. All right, we got an exciting Raz Report this week. I've been waiting for this one. A crypto guy who made a lot of money in crypto, probably a lot of money in a bunch of things. Brock Pierce coming on the Raz Report. Ran for president a few years ago. Just entrepreneur, get shit done. This interview didn't start for a few minutes because we just keep talking about these connections. Monopoly Air. I mean, Monopoly Air. Can you just tell us what Monopoly Air is, or you don't want to say it on the podcast?
It's you can look it up. It's on your social media. It started, I think you can even go to the website, monopolyair.com. What it was is, I'm a waste not, want not guy. I live my life focused on impact. But when I was running for president in 2020, I'm having to go to all over the country, and places where there's not direct flights, and I'm traveling with a team. And so I dry leased a plane from a prominent New York hotel family. And after the campaign, I gave them their plane back, and they contacted me and said, hey, we actually don't need it. There's COVID. Like, we don't use our plane much anymore. Would you like to buy the plane without a broker and, get a good deal? And I'm like, do I really need a plane? Well, I'm starting to do all this stuff in South America, got involved, led the first formal delegation to El Salvador to assist President Bukele with his Bitcoin law. And then all these other presidents are calling. And I'm like, well, from Puerto Rico, where I live, I'm 2 hours away from Colombia, but there are no now there's a direct flight. But generally speaking, okay, I could see why we might need a plane and traveling and team. So I bought the plane. And so I've got this plane and we go down. I actually bring Logan Paul, major, most people know who he is, one of the biggest social media influencers in the world. And he comes down to El Salvador for Bitcoin Day. And so we're throwing, I bring the drones from Burning Man and we put Bitcoin in the heavens and like all this stuff. And we have this major event down in El Salvador to celebrate. And we get back and then he contacts me and he's like, Brock, I'm working on my 99 Originals, which was his NFT project. He's like, can we do a collab with Alec Monopoly, who's a big graffiti artist? And can we turn your, Monopoly Man, your plane, and with crypto coins flying down the side and bills and things? And I'm like, well, it just so happens that I have my own FBO operation. I have my own fueling operation. I have my own maintenance operations. I have my own paint.
In Puerto Rico?
Yeah, paints planes. And, I'm uniquely suited to do it because we have a company that paints airplanes. So I'm like, let's do it. And so they helicopter in and we do this whole like collab and paint the plane and they put it on social media. And so the plane's been seen by probably a few 100 million people. It's at least 100 million. You'd have to go add up all the different things that are out there. And so, yeah, Monopoly Air is a Gulf Stream that's here in Puerto Rico that you can go look up. And the plan is...
and you can see it in the right corner of your screen if you're watching right now. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Plan is, and we haven't launched it, but to create an NFT with a boarding pass, right? And so that you have a boarding pass that allows you to get on the plane. It can only be used once, and then you have to pass it along to someone else. And it's an interesting way to get on the plane, to connect with me or any of the other interesting people that are flying on it, to go on delegations, to go meet with government. So I took a role in the United Nations as part of a permanent mission that covers Spain, Portugal, the Dominican Republic, and every country in Central and South America. And then created our own NGO, which is unicorn.org, the United Council of Rising Nations, which helps world leaders understand how innovation is a tool for the transformation. Like,
Got it.
all the
Got it.
things that are, like if you got a problem, there are incredible innovators, whether it be Elon Musk. There's so many incredible pioneers in the world that are creating innovative solutions to solving the world's greatest challenges. And generally, most of us that are, call it, on the entrepreneurial creative end, generally don't speak government. Right.
Yep.
And so they're two different languages. And so I'm call it a translator. And I basically connect governments with leading technologies that can try and solve major problems. And because of my location, I focused initially on the Caribbean and Central and South America. 2024 is focus on Africa now.
Weren't you just with the president of like El Salvador or something with the crypto thing? Where like I think I saw something on social media about that.
Yeah, so we led the first formal delegation into El Salvador.
That's right.
Since COVID, we took a team of 36 of us down to meet with all the ministers and present all the different solutions. And most of the people on that trip are the ones that provided all the technologies and things to roll out the Bitcoin law on time. It was very aggressive. They announced it at David Bailey or Bitcoin BTC Media, the Bitcoin conference in Miami. And by the way, David Bailey lives here. He moved down here. So
when did he move down there?
David moved, I think, 2 years ago, 2.5, 2-3.
That's what I was. It was 2.5 years. What I looked at. October 2021 was
obviously longtime friend, and slowly, it just seems like more and more of are the most influential people this side of the world, Americans in particular.
Yep.
Are moving down here, but it's really,
we're talking about Puerto Rico guys. Dorado is one of the communities in Puerto Rico, but we're talking about Puerto Rico. There's a lot of tax advantages if you're in the crypto space. But back to the plane. So I saw the plane, the Monopoly airplane, because David Einhorn, the guy who owns Poppy Steak with David Grutman, and Alec Monopoly are always together. And I kept seeing this plane. I didn't know I didn't know the story behind it. So now I know the story behind Monopoly Air. That is like, I don't know if everyone knows that story, but that's cool. The NFT selling to you, like, that's awesome. And that's the kind of cool stuff that you meet Logan Paul or connect with him and then come up with these ideas and putting that in place. I mean, it's like the Concorde way back then, a unique experience. And it would be cool if the average person could take a ride on it.
Yeah, we're happy. Well, that's the whole idea. We'll see if I get around to it. It's not my highest priority right now, but the idea is an NFT boarding pass that allows you to pass it along, basically refer somebody else that might be, able to do something interesting. We're working on a few other planes, Sovereign Sky, Dark Knight, basically.
Okay. So my first question was actually a weird one. Your name is Brock Jeffrey Pierce. Okay. Did you always go by Brock in the beginning? Because Brock Pierce is a badass name. Like, you should be a superhero in a movie. Brock Pierce. Like, that's just a freaking badass name. So is that really your name?
Yes, it's from my birth certificate.
It's unbelievable. It's a great name.
I was born and have always gone by Brock Pierce.
I mean, that's like, you knew when you were in elementary school or middle school that you're going to be successful. Not maybe because inside you were very smart, but your name, like, that's just like Brock Pierce. Like, it's a great name. You probably have heard it's a great name. Maybe no one's, gone out over the top like I am, but Brock Pierce is a badass name. Just got to say that.
So Brock in Hebrew means lightning or blessing, but in Old English it means badger. So, my pants are covered in lightning bolts. So usually I'm wearing lightning bolts, but also, we like the honey badger.
Got it.
As I like to say, a Brock is just a rock, but bolder.
Brock is just a rock. So in Hebrew, it means, wait, you said, say what?
Lightning.
Lightning. Interesting. Okay. All right. Hopefully there's no Brock here in Michigan today, right? No lightning.
I've been watching. There's been lightning outside right before.
Okay. Now, how did you end up in one of my favorite movies, Mighty Ducks?
Well, I'm originally from Minnesota, and like most kids from Minnesota, we play hockey, and
got it.
We're the land of 10,000 lakes, and so what we do is we freeze, we ice fish, and we skate. And so I started acting at the age of 3, and so my first memory in life takes place on a set making commercials. Actually, the first one was a commercial for a radio station, but a commercial for television, advertising the radio station KCRW. And it was a commercial, "Don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys." And so that's where life began for me. And then I was making
So,
Nintendo.
so your parents got you into it?
My mother did, yes.
Okay.
And so I was acting, and then I don't know what had happened, and I probably should go look it up. But sometime around when I was 9, so the late '80s and moving into the '90s, all of a sudden a bunch of major movies came to film in Minnesota. My guess is there was probably a tax credit created.
Yep.
That's usually what everything's tax credits, right? And taxes, that's what moves everything. That's the lever that a government has to attract economic development. And so most likely a tax credit was created because a bunch of movies got made. Mighty Ducks came to town. And so I was one of the only kids with acting experience that knew how to play hockey. And so if I didn't book a role in that film, I would have been time to throw in the towel. But I did. And so I got to play young Emilio Estevez or Gordon Bombay. I open up the movie, the famous missing of the shot, hitting the goalpost. And actually,
go back for it, like triple deke. The triple deke, wasn't that what it was?
In my period of the film as the kid,
I remember.
Right, the flying V came later, but
the triple deke was when they
my character, young Gordon Bombay, but he wasn't yet a Duck. He was a Hawk as a kid. And it was actually that moment in his life that sets the premise of like the redemption story, right? He, because of that terrible experience
with the coach,
with the coach that was, being tough, way too tough, perhaps, led to him becoming, a win at all cost attorney that, was just got to win because of this childhood experience that he hadn't yet healed from. And so he became this killer attorney that, was perhaps not understanding the importance of morals, right? And the importance of that moral compass. And his true north was off. And that led to, eventually a DUI. And then he gets sentenced to community service. Yep. And he's got to go basically teach the Ducks.
Yep.
Were the worst team in Minnesota on the worst hockey team possible. They were like the complete motley crew. And in that experience, he goes through his own redemption story, and the team becomes great and comes in, and the Ducks end up beating the Hawks, and it's a great movie. Definitely one, and still they just remade a TV show called Game Changers. So the Ducks and that redemption story is continuing to influence even the current generation.
So probably a dumb question since it was so long ago, that movie. Do you guys get royalty checks for it?
I do.
Really?
I do.
Oh my God, it's like from 30.
They're not substantial, but I still receive what you'd call residuals.
Wow. Okay. Anything from back in the day, from your acting days, that that you learned that you utilize now in your technology, business, entrepreneurial days right now?
Well, I get asked by parents all the time, like, should they let their kids get into acting? And my answer is usually, yeah. I mean, if it's what they want, I mean, acting is a wonderful thing to study. It's a great skill set. And I said, the main thing they're going to learn, especially if they can get an agent and can go on auditions, is they're going to learn how to interview. Knowing how to interview. Most people don't interview all that often in their life. They do it every so often. But becoming good at the interview is a valuable life skill. And they're going to get really good at rejection. And learning how to be rejected and not take it personally is another very valuable life skill, especially if you want to become an entrepreneur. You're going to make a lot of pitches. You're going to do a lot of pitching, and be turned down all the time. And so
that's amazing, John.
They're valuable life skills. And then I always warn them. But if they become successful, you might have a problem. Call me up. The odds of that are low, so don't worry so much about that. But there's a lot of people that attempt to become obviously movie stars, and very few do.
Yeah, I mean the rejection thing that we just had on John Paul or JP DeJoria, who started Patron and John Paul Mitchell Hair Systems, and he said his number one thing was going knocking on doors, and he's been rejected all the time, and removing the fear of rejection. That was his number one tip for success. And that sounds like you're saying a similar thing. It's very helpful to learn.
But yeah, you got to fear less and face your fears.
I know. It's funny.
One of the most common ones in life, right? Don't ask, don't get.
It's true, but it's like, I'm, I guess, an entrepreneur. I started this company in my basement, and we're like over 100 people. But I get fearful of like confrontation in the sense of I have to make a phone call with someone and I'm trying to I dread the phone call because it might be a tough conversation and I keep putting it off and I procrastinate on the call and I make every excuse to do something else. Do you have any tips for handling that kind of stuff? Because I feel like a lot of us probably deal with that kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all do that. Um, it starts with the awareness, right? The fact that you're aware of the problem
So
is how.
you do that too?
I mean, to some extent, it's just I'm so busy. But I mean, no, I recommend just get it over with. A lot of times, the fear of the conflict, the fear of the confession, right? Whatever it is, right? You maybe made a mistake, and instead of just like telling the person I screwed up, you're like, I feel terrible, and then you feel terrible, and you feel terrible for a long time until you finally like come clean, and all of a sudden you're like, and the other side's like, whatever. And you're like, why didn't I do that earlier? And the
That's a good
same
point.
thing, or it's somebody that's harmed you or taken advantage or something. There's a problem, and you don't want to bring up the conflict. And then as soon as you do, like you might have gotten resolution to it. One of the things is, the awareness of it is the first step, and then with the awareness of it, taking action, being mindful, right, and then taking action and addressing things, getting it over with is generally a great relief.
No, you're absolutely right. Now there's so many like things I could ask you, and people when I ask people like what kind of questions, well, one of the ones that stuck out, you're in a lot of things these days, and we're gonna get to how you got into cryptocurrency or blockchain in 2013. We're gonna get to that in a minute, but how do you manage? Like, you can name some of the stuff your investments you're in, but how do you manage your day? You're in a lot of things. You speak at a lot of places. Your time is in demand. It wasn't an easy interview to get. So how do you go about managing your day? Do you have goals that you set for the beginning of the week? And then my next question with that is, how are you still so motivated to keep doing? Because you're not doing it for money anymore. Maybe you are to keep score, but beyond that, I think you have enough money to live a few lives.
Yeah, I mean,
Those are a
I
couple
do
questions.
a lot. I do so much that part of it is I've made commitments. I've committed to do certain things. I've started certain businesses. I might have co-investors, partners, whatever, in various things. And so, what motivates me is to fulfill my commitments, to complete my work, whatever that is. And so, I'm, let's say, very committed to the things that I do. I try to be discerning in choosing those things, right? I don't just do things because I can. I do things because I should, because I've asked myself, why am I doing this? What is the thing? Sometimes I'm doing things because I want to learn a new skill. I want to study a new industry, or I think something's going to have a certain positive impact. So, I'm so committed to so many things. I wake up usually before sunrise, and I'm usually the last person to bed, and I barely sleep. and
Are you
I'm
working this whole time that you're up, or do you
Yeah.
do a lot of like search, Instagram browsing and a lot of that shit, or not really?
There's not a whole lot of that because there's just not a whole lot of time. I'm usually, we say 18 hours is a half day.
And you're just motivated to keep going and doing that, and you love it. It's not work to you, really. You love what you're doing. I take it.
Yeah. I love to do. I love working. It's all play to me, right? I love learning. I'm a very curious person, and I enjoy the journey of learning. And I do all sorts of stuff. I mean, I kind of it'd be easier to say what I don't do, and I can't think of what those
So
things are.
when you were in elementary school or middle school, would how like what kind of student were you? Were you hyperactive or anything like that?
So again, I grew up making movies. And so by the time I was 12, I'd already made 4 movies in Minnesota. Disney brought me out to California to shoot Mighty Ducks 2. And then I just turned 13, moved out to California to pursue really a full time acting career, which then continued to turn into a successful one. And so my childhood is not
Got
typical,
it.
right? I grew up on
Yep.
sets making movies. And when I wasn't on a set making a film, I tried to go to a normal school, but it didn't really work, and so I had to move into a school that's really just dedicated to working actors, uh, because it just you need something that accommodates the unusual, you know, not typical lifestyle.
The reason I asked the question the way I did is because you're in so many things. You're so driven. You get things done, and you've been so successful. Part of my thing was like, when you were younger, did you have all these different interests? But you
Yes, I
had
was building lemonade stand businesses. I was an incredibly entrepreneurial kid,
that's okay. Yeah,
whether it be collecting Star Trek, basically collectibles that had low numbers and sports cards and Magic the Gathering cards and
oh yeah. So,
software and
so
I
you,
mean everything under the sun that a kid would figure out, and building those things. And then I even quit acting when I was 16 to become an internet entrepreneur. I think I was the youngest internet entrepreneur in the 1990s during the Internet 1.0. So I quit acting to start what was one of, or the first, call it streaming media companies. It
which
was
one?
Cursor. It was called Digital Entertainment Network, or DEN. We raised $88 million from Microsoft, Lazard, Chase, NBC, David Geffen, Terry Semmel, Mark Nathanson, kind of the who's who. And we had 30 original programs. So we were the first company doing like internet programming media.
You started this,
Yeah, when I was 16.
and you like knew Terry Semmel and these guys. Like, I mean, Terry Semmel was a Yahoo CEO for a period of time, and before that,
We taught him tech. He was at the time the chairman and CEO of Warner Brothers. And so he was going to become chairman of my company. And so we were, he was the one, like, we were the ones that kind of introduced him to the impact of the internet, and why, where the internet media would meet.
what'd you do after Den?
When the internet bubble burst in the spring of 2000, I'd also started another business on the side, because I believed that virtual currency and digital assets were going to be a big thing. I figured this out in 1999. And so when the internet bubble burst in the spring of 2000, I decided to go pursue the metaverse. We called them MMORPGs, or massively multiplayer games, role playing games at the time. You may have heard of World of Warcraft or Second Life. And so I went and became the primary market maker for all of the metaverses or virtual worlds, whether it's all those things. And so I was I was the market maker across thousands of effective virtual countries. I was PayPal's largest merchant. I was instrumental in launching Alipay in China. I had 97% market share in South Korea.
Wait, how do it's amazing. You decide to be the market maker for that stuff. How do you become the market maker for it though? Like how, like I get like, Spears Leeds Kellogg, market maker for stocks back in the day. Like how do you become the market maker for World of Warcraft? I mean, or the main one?
The first thing is the insight. The insight I had is that just because something was intangible didn't make it less valuable. And it's because of Magic the Gathering and baseball cards. I was playing a game called Sanctum, which was a game made in 97 or 98 by Digital Addiction. And it was basically Magic the Gathering online meets chess. And so I became one of the biggest collectors of those cards. And then I was buying and selling and trading. And then I contacted the game company and said, hey, just like comic book stores and baseball card shops, I'd like to be a wholesaler. I'd like to buy virtual packs of cards from you in bulk, and I run the singles store. I run the singles market. And they're like, that makes sense, digital analog. And so I figured that out in the 90s. And then after the bubble burst, I said, okay, I'm a professional gamer. I was, I think, the only person that I've ever heard of that would 6-box, where I would use 6 computers, 6 monitors, 6 keyboards, 6 mice, and I would play an entire rating group myself. Just my hands going for hours on end, playing 6 computers simultaneously, not with any bots. This is before botting had been incorporated. I was like a pro gamer. And so I'm like, wow, I can do things and make many thousands of dollars a day playing a video game. I wonder if I can teach people how to play games professionally to make money in the metaverse, in the MMORPGs, in the virtual world. And so the first thing I did was, okay, I'm going to go online and I'm going to start selling digital gold and and I'm going to have my own mining operation, but using people in the game. And then I would teach people how to play one computer, and then I'd teach people how to play two computers, and the really good ones I could teach eventually how to play three computers. And then I had about I had a whole big office of this going on, and I'm like, wow, the demand for this is going to require thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands. This is not going to be the model. I just need to become the market maker and run the front end and the exchanges. So I need to be run all the exchanges, and I need to run all the websites to handle all the sales and distribution. And instead, I just need to teach the world how they can make money online. And then I moved to Hong Kong, and then I went and taught the Chinese how they could play games to make money, and built up a supply chain of about 300,000 or 400,000 people ultimately that would play games to mine gold. And then I would be the main person selling that in the world. I was doing over $1 billion a year, and
like when you're doing over $1 billion a year, that's like in gross, like people trading, and
those were my sales, yeah, over $1 billion a year in sales.
And then you would take a cut of that.
Yeah, depending upon which market. So in like South Korea, I was doing over $1 billion a year just in South Korea. I had 97% market share. That was an exchange model, so my margins were different. In the U.S., for example, I had it was a retail market, not an exchange market. And in Europe, I kept it more as a retail market. And so with retail, I took retail like margins. Once they were exchanges, I would take, and I owned most of the top companies doing it. I had many brands, and then I also ran the exchanges. I was like, if you went behind every company kind of at the time, I was all of them for the most part.
Did you raise a bunch of money for this?
So no, because the internet was dead after the spring of 2000. And so I bootstrapped it to 100 million plus of revenues, not sales, and about, I think, 20 million of EBITDA before I did my first fundraise. And I raised my money from Goldman Sachs Principal Strategies, which was the black box of Goldman that was responsible for 40% of their profits prior to the financial collapse of 2008. So this was the prop desk.
Yep.
It was the first private investment they ever made. They took a look. They're like, you're managing markets of like currencies across thousands of virtual countries, like all over the world, and you're wholesaling.
I don't even know how
inside of the virtual world. Like they were just kind of like, who are you?
Are you a software builder too?
I mean, I don't write the code, but obviously I've
somehow you built all that, and you had to hire some people to build all that. I mean, that's a pretty intensive operation.
And you'll find this one interesting, and I'm sorry to some, and you're welcome to others. Steve Bannon worked full time for me back then. He was my deal guy.
So why didn't he help run your presidential campaign?
He was with Trump.
Okay.
And so, but I knew Bannon. Bannon worked at that company for 7 years.
Did you sell that company?
Yeah, sold it in different pieces. So I built up another company called Zam.com, which was a top 100 media business for games. So it was a top 100 website in the world in terms of traffic.
Zam?
Zam. It was lots of websites. If you played World of Warcraft, it was Wowhead. It was ThoughtBot. If you played EverQuest, it was Alakazam. So if you played in these worlds, I also ran all the websites where you'd get all the information on all the items and all the quests and all the spoilers and all the maps and tracked your character. And so I did about 40 acquisitions to roll all that up. And then I sold that to Tencent. So Tencent, one of the biggest companies in the world, one of the biggest internet companies, Chinese companies, bought Tencent from me.
What year was that?
I sold that to them, I think, in 2011. Maybe 2012.
Okay.
Then the exchange business, I sold to a public company because I was trying to use the company to acquire Mt. Gox in 2000. I want to say 12. And so I was trying to buy Mt. Gox with my company because I had all the gamers, right? I had all the Chinese gamers. I had all the Koreans. I had everyone that bought or sold virtual currency in games were basically my customers across these businesses. And I said, we have capped out at market growth. There's no more growth, and multiples, our business is not going up in value. It's going down in value because we're looking stale. Either I need to go control the secondary market for frequent flyers and points, and I need to go do that with American Express. But I need to expand into another market. And the other market I need to do is I need to go get into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. But my investors were Goldman Sachs, Oak Investment Partners, and Maverick, three of the three very large institutions. Another smaller firm called Bonanza, and then I had some private investors, Bart and Brad Stevens, whose father started Robbie Stevens, one of the four banks that took all of the Microsofts public.
Robbie Stevens.
Robbie Stevens.
Robertson Stevens. That was the full name. I
Yeah.
interviewed when I was 20 years old when I was in undergraduate school.
Paul Stevens has two sons, Bart and Brad. And so they were the first gamers. They had a hedge fund investing in public game companies. And they were buying so much gold from me that one day they just looked at each other. They're like, this gold business might be a better business than the game business. And they had a eureka aha moment. And so they started doing a research study. This is in 2003 or 2004. And they went and looked up all the companies, and figured out all the companies that do this. And then they went and they started doing further investigation. And they found out that all roads led to me. They're like, wow, before anybody even knows this is an industry, this guy rolled up the whole world. We need to find this Brock guy. And so they tracked me down through a mutual friend somehow. They flew to my offices and so they're on the board of the old company. And so I'm like, guys, we need to buy Mt. Gox. Like, this is, the growth business for us. And we control all the customers. I mean, there's nobody that can promote Bitcoin better than us. We have all the people that buy virtual currency in the world, all the gamers that buy virtual currencies, like they will get this like immediately. So like Jesse Powell that started Kraken ran a competitor, Loot, LEWT, Roger Ver, a lot of us came from that business, but I was the really big one. And so I said, like, this is I think the move for us. And we went and did due diligence. We even had a deal figured out, but I couldn't get my board to approve it because it was Bitcoin and Goldman Sachs was on my board. Right. And so Oak Investment Partners, I mean, everybody eventually got into it, but I kept going to the board saying, guys, we need to do this. Then I gave them all my research reports and I told them why I believed that this market was going to go somewhere. And then I came back to the board and said, okay, guys, do I have approval to go do this? They said no. And it was just kind of an unpleasant call. And I called up Bart and Brad Stevens afterwards. This is how Blockchain Capital got started. I said, Brad, I don't mind that you don't agree with me on Bitcoin, but what bothers me is you didn't bother to read any of the research materials I sent you. You had 3 months to form an opinion. And the fact that, you guys are my friends, and you're young enough, you get it, you're in the market. Like, if anyone was going to understand this, it was you, and you didn't bother to even look into it at all. I spent a lot of time. I've been flying to Japan, having these conversations, trying to do this stuff. And Matt Smith and everybody, we've worked a lot on this, and you just dismissed it without any time or attention. Like, this really bothers me because I think this is very important to the business. And so they were so bothered by my conversation that they then went and did a research project on Bitcoin, which is how Blockchain Capital got started. They're like, Brock, okay, you're right. And then I went and tried. I said the board gave me permission to go buy Mt. Gox independently of the company. But because I couldn't use my old business to pivot into crypto, I just sold it all off. And so I sold all the pieces.
Is this where another guest we had on the Raz Report, Tim Draper, I thought he bought some Bitcoin from the Mt. Gox hack. Like, is that where you got introduced to Tim Draper?
No. I've been a tech entrepreneur in VC
for years. So
I'm probably the oldest young guy. I mean, remember, I'm a 1997 tech entrepreneur, like, that raised serious money. And like, I've been doing this long before there was Bitcoin.
That's right. Okay. Got it.
I've started so many companies. I mean, I've done tons of things prior to Bitcoin. This is not my first rodeo.
Got it. So you already had those connections. So this is when
before crypto. I I had major investors many times over.
Yeah.
Also, I'd had exits. All sorts of things, and I was also a managing director at a firm called Clearstone. And so Clearstone was called Idea Lab Capital. Idea Lab was the first internet.
Bill Gross.
Yeah. And
Bill
so
Gross, Idea Lab. That's where I wanted to work in college. He had everything. Go to. He had the thing before
invented half the
Google.
internet's business models. I
Yes.
love that. I love that I'm talking to someone that actually knows the history
I am so glad you.
here.
I have the cover of Bill Gross on the yellow Wired magazine. My wife she just tried to throw it away again. The magazine where Bill Gross is on the cover with all these ideas, and I have the cover of that magazine at my house, but my wife may throw it away.
He was the first internet incubator, and out of his head probably came half the ideas, that are the business models of the internet. And so Idea Lab, when it was going public, had Idea Lab Capital, which was the fund that cohabitated to seed all the deals. And so when Idea Lab was going public, they changed the name of Idea Lab Capital to Clearstone. And because of my acting background and things, I was an LA, Silicon Beach, entrepreneur and angel investor and things. And so I went and became, I started working at Clearstone on a new fund to go do a bunch of stuff with them. And they put the first $5 million into PayPal. They were the main investor in PayPal, and tons of stuff. It came out of Idea Lab. And so
you were one of the managing directors of Clearstone.
Of a new fund that was being done there, which the main people there were Bill Elkis from the Idea Lab days, Jim Armstrong, who was one of the, he's the one that led the PayPal investment, and William Quigley. And so I brought William Quigley along with me, who also was co-founder of Tether with me, and did a bunch of things. And then John Yantis, I also brought along because, John and I wouldn't say I didn't bring John along. John and I went and did this together. But John was my main competitor in the virtual currency business from 2002, 3, and 4. And we merged our companies way back when. And so John and I brought everybody I worked with, eventually got into crypto. It's like, this is futile.
So you
will be starting companies, you will be investing in companies. And I mean, I was creating a new crypto company every 45 to 60 days.
So you didn't just get into crypto in 2013. Like it seems like you were in crypto before that, but you bought Bitcoin. What was the price you started buying Bitcoin at? I'm just trying to give some people you don't have to go into details. I'm trying to give that basic listener.
So if you were early in crypto, you most likely didn't buy Bitcoin.
Interesting.
You most likely mined it. In the early days, there were not a lot of ways to buy Bitcoin. If you wanted to buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin, that was not exactly an easy thing to do. You could go to Mt. Gox and wire money to Japan, and there were a couple of ways, but it was not an easy thing to do. So most early, if you were trying to do something material, Coinbase was only started in 2012. Really was a 2013 company. So you basically, most early adopters would have mined because it starts usually as a research project, right?
Right.
And then take like the mining stuff. When the first ASIC was created, it was Avalon that created the first ASIC miner. I had 10% of the batch 1 Avalons, so I had 10% of all the world's ASICs in the beginning.
What's that mean?
I had the most advanced mining operation when the first ASICs were engaged, and then I ran KNC Miner, which was one of the other China, and I introduced a lot of these things to the Chinese.
But to give like Tim Draper, the story is he bought the Bitcoin from the Mt. Gox bankrupt or something, and
Yes.
For a lot for I forget what price, but it was
Tim Draper's son, Adam Draper, had a business called Boost.vc, and Boost kind of got into it first. And I believe that his son is probably the main reason that he, was brought up to speed and got excited. And then, yes, he bought a big block of Bitcoin from the auctions. And it wasn't from the failure of Mt. Gox. He bought Silk Road government auctioned coins.
Got it. And so the reason I bring that up, like you're talking about that miner you had 10% of it, and some of the early ones
We were operating those.
you were operating them. But what's
You know, we
that
built the
mean?
largest mining operation in the U.S. up in Wenatchee. I was an angel investor in Bitfury. Started KNC Miner China. I was distributing, the miners. We won Shopify, the Store of the Year award with another one we started called Zoom Hash. We were selling all the grid seeds, and so Mark Cuban, Ariana Huffington, Damon John, and Tim Ferriss, I think, all became advisors of the company because we went from 0 to like 20 million in sales in no
So,
time.
so you were so early in this stuff. What part of what I was just trying to demonstrate is how early you were, and you probably have examples like people say they bought Bitcoin at $76 or whatever, and they own it to this. Bitcoin's not the example here, but you were a miner, you were like the marketplace. Like, what's an example like this? Something that you were so early, like, and the value's gone up so much. I'm trying to demonstrate like your foresight, your prescient calls, and making these picks for someone that doesn't know crypto is what I'm trying to.
Yeah, I don't think of myself as a crypto investor. I had an operation similar to Idea Lab. I was cranking out the company. So I was chairman of Mastercoin, right, which was the first ICO. The first ICO.
Okay.
I started Blockchain Capital, the first venture fund.
Yep.
Base. I started Tether, the first, the main successful stablecoin. BCAP, the first digital security token. Noble Markets, the first crypto bank. The first two NFT platforms were created in my house, Wax and BlockV or Atomic. There's 100 others. Did the first smart contract, I think, that was successful. A lot of the ideas came out of my living room. Probably a majority of the innovations.
Wow. And I know one of the reasons we were having you on is talking about the Bitcoin ETFs, or that the ETFs now. What do you think about that? I know Kathy Wood has been a big proponent of getting these as ETFs. And
I think it's a huge thing. Right? Everyone's like, oh, why is the price of Bitcoin not, mooning or rocketing right now? It did. The price soared, right? Buy on the news,
rumor,
the hype, the rumor, and sell on the results, right? So yep. It soared and it got priced in, and then it went live and it dropped, and that's kind of standard. So no one should be surprised by that.
I made that trade, by the way. I bought in the rumors, and then once it was getting approved, I was selling off my shares of like GB, just different symbols as a trade, like a little bit, nothing crazy. I was just messing around. But that, yeah, it's the same old as any stock market, right?
But the price is way up from where it was prior to this,
substantially.
And so the ETF has clearly moved the market in a positive way. And I think the other thing that matters even more is that the SEC has approved these things in the market. We've been waiting for U.S. regulatory sort of clarity. A lot of people are like, the government. I think that that argument, I think, was long over, but this is the nail in the coffin of anybody thinking this might go away. Right? This is the definitive event. Some people thought that Tim Draper being able to buy those coins from the government was an effective approval of some sort. I don't think so. This obviously is. This is kind of the first major event where the U.S. government, the SEC, has approved a Bitcoin ETF so that the retail are able to buy Bitcoin. I think this is a game-changing event that clearly says that, because there's been a major concern. I'm a U.S. citizen. I ran for president. And remember the first filing, the first application for a Bitcoin ETF was 10 years ago. That the American population, the public, were deprived of $76 Bitcoin, your $200 Bitcoin. Had an ETF been created, this incredible opportunity in this enormous wealth creation event, the American retail were deprived of it because it was held back. It is what it is, but it bothers me, right? And so better late than never. I think it's great because for anybody listening, right? Did you lose your first Bitcoin? A lot of people did have a problem with their first, because it's certainly if you've been around for a while, the idea that if you want to get exposure to this, that you can do it through a structured product like an ETF is a good starting way. That's a good way for beginners to be able to get access to this asset class, begin to research. Then that will probably lead to getting a wallet, probably on a centralized exchange and a retail friendly one like a Coinbase, which then eventually leads to, but you want people to learn, right? It is a break world.
But you really like Coinbase is around, but you Voyager and Binance and what was the other one? It went bankrupt. I don't know. It was a smaller one. I was. What'd you say?
There's been many.
Many. I was the chair of the credit committee for Voyager. I had money in a stablecoin, USDC. And I actually had the Circle CEO on the show, and I asked the question, how can, these different brokerages like Voyager and pay 9% on USDC when rates were 0%? And by the way, I'm not honored that I was the chair of the credit committee. That means I had a lot of money there. But anyway, I said, how can they pay this? And he said, because we're disrupting the banks, because, banks take your money and they lend out for mortgages, for credit cards, all that stuff. But really that could be partly true, but each brokerage was different in the sense that they leveraged up with taking the money and then giving it to the guys, that hedge fund, 3AC. And so like the USDC, there's 1-to-1 stable coin, but you didn't know how that money at the brokerage was being treated. And it also wasn't SIPC. So a lot of people, including myself, were confused by that. I didn't think it was risk capital, but it was risk capital. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there was a counterparty risk there. There were a bunch of issues. So BankCore, I was part of that project as well, which created DeFi, right? Invented the first DeFi platform.
Oh, is that so? You're responsible for this whole USDC thing?
No, I give the credit to the BankCore team, Ayal, who I work with still on another project.
Got it.
But Alia, Benartzi, they're an really amazing Israeli team, and I was just a very important advisor to them.
Okay.
But yeah, part of the deal, and investor amongst other things. But when I saw the second sort of wave of DeFi come in, I was very alarmed by the yields that were being offered. I was very alarmed by Terra Luna and what. Again, I was just watching these yields, and it did not seem at all sustainable to me. That
was like 20%, and I was in USDC. I'm like, oh, that's 9% at Voyager. I'm safe. My brother smartly is like, too good to be true. So I
literally had these young, I had these young entrepreneurs at my house around this time. They're like, Brock, you were the king of like each of these cycles. Like it's like your room is where the action was. Are you just like, have you lost it? Because what's your DeFi play? What's your big moves in this market cycle? I go, I sat this one out. My intuition, I watched this one. There's a couple of markets I sat out. I got out of the crypto mining market when cloud mining emerged. Because the minute cloud mining emerged, where you could go online and you just bought a share of mining, I'm like, there's just too many ways that something could go wrong. Okay. Too many ways that people can create a Ponzi and cook the books and something. Yep. Cloud mining made me, and we saw that with Ga Miner and a bunch of, we watched if you were around for that market cycle, and the DeFi yields just really bothered me. I'm watching Celsius and BlockFi and,
Why didn't I know you back then? BlockFi was the one I was thinking about. Yeah.
And I'm watching all these things, it's just like, and then I have all these young superstars, and they're just like, have you lost it? You're not the man anymore. And I'm sitting there going, did I make a mistake sitting out? It bothered me for all of a second. And then I'm like, it's a little late for that. So, and then by the way, a week later is when everything started to blow up, and I'm like, oof, glad my intuition was right on this one, and I made the right call of staying out of that market cycle.
It's just funny how clueless a lot of people were, including myself, when Terra Luna was, gunzo, and I didn't know it affected 3AC, which then affected Voyager and all that stuff. And I just thought, hey, it's 1-to-1, whatever that meant from Circle's
But
perspective.
you remember the original internet. This was basically the same thing that happened with the internet in 1999, 2000. All these internet companies were buying advertising from each other, and basically there was this massive counterparty risk because everybody's numbers were inflated because that was a round tripping of advertising revenue. Effectively, the same thing kind of happened in crypto, and you couldn't see all the counterparty risk and how you pulled on one string, and everything started to fall like dominoes, and a lot of smart people missed it. I wouldn't beat yourself up.
I did that. Yeah, I did that already. But we've been with you we're with Brock Pierce, entrepreneur extraordinaire. I had no clue that you were involved with Idea Lab from starting these companies.
No, I was not
involved with the
Idea Lab, and I was part of Clearstone.
Clearstone.
It's the firm. Yes, much later in its life. I was not there during the glory years. I worked at Clearstone on a new fund for a while. It's starting in 2000, I think I want to say 8 or 9 or 10.
But the truth is, all your life you've been in the room where it happens. Okay, that's all your life. I mean, I heard Digital Entertainment Network, DEN, creating the exchanges behind the games, World of Warcraft way back when, all these different things. I mean, so you were there before. So I just a couple last quick questions that I think could be helpful to people. First one is, how do you stay updated on the latest developments in blockchain and cryptocurrency? I know you have your network, but is there another way that you stay updated on that and stuff? And blockchain?
How?
Yeah.
I mean,
just read a lot.
I'm an investor, and
everything.
I work on a lot of things. I'm still got new companies coming out, and I've spread out into a lot of other industries. So I mean, I'm not as focused as I was. I was full time crypto from 2012 to 2018.
And you made a lot of money doing that.
Then I got very focused on Puerto Rico and things here, and then I got very focused on governance and our government and elections, and then I've gotten very focused on other governments and governance, right? Our system of governance, that thing that governs over us.
No, and I appreciate
for us, in service to us.
Well, I appreciate that, and I wish there were more people like you, because you see who's running for president these days, and people. It seems like you want to do the right thing and care about others, and that attitude is like government isn't there for us, I feel like, these days. But
yeah, but it's I keep studying why is that, and why do I feel that way? Why do we feel that way? What's ultimately wrong? And I enjoy the process of going deep into discovery, and I do that by getting involved. I mean, I ran for president of the United States as a reconnaissance mission. I announced on July 4th of election year. I spent, I think, $7 million to go learn, all the ways in which the system is rigged.
Wow. Okay.
And I've gone on and done a lot of things in politics. I'm very involved in the things that are going on, because what I learned is, if not us, who, and if not now, when. And I was walking around Washington, D.C. one night, just going, wow. If something's broken, or if you don't like something the way that it is, do something about it, fix it, be the solution.
Isn't it so hard though?
Like people that complain. It's less complaining, more explaining, and roll your sleeves up and do something, right? And that's how I operate. And so I just became aware that I think that there's an opportunity to improve things, and so I've made it my mission to get involved and improve things, because I think they can be improved. I think that there's tremendous potential for improvement.
If I could help on that mission or things, let me know from a media perspective. Can you share a piece of advice that has had a significant impact on your career?
Advice.
You've given a lot already, so I think
main advice, that is I think tenacity is really the key. Probably is you know you only fail when you quit.
Got it. That's
Now,
that's
that
good.
doesn't mean something should be quit, right? You should quit some things, right? There, you have to use discernment and realize the juice isn't worth the squeeze, or your original view as to your thesis as to why something might be. New information has changed your outlook and view, but in general, uh, you're going to, in whatever you're doing, you're going to encounter obstacles, and you'll usually overcome them if you are tenacious enough to push through, and it's going to usually make you want to quit, and then don't. If you believe in what you're doing, if you believe that this is what you want to be doing, and if you believe it's important, or you whatever it is that's motivating you, I think that tenacity is probably the main trait that I find between those that are successful and not. I think that curiosity is another really important one. Just, never stop learning.
Okay, no, that was awesome, guys. That's a clip right there for sure. That was awesome. One more question. Cryptocurrencies, will they play a big part in the future of finance? I'm assuming you're saying yes, but just want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, I think that, I wouldn't have done all the things I've done if I didn't believe that this is a fundamental game changing sort of event. It's changing the world in which we live. I mean, just look at Tether. Tether is one example of a project we started that
Crazy. Can't believe you started that.
is doing $50 trillion a year in
Unbelievable.
transactional volume. 50 trillion with a T, like my hat. And it's changing trade finance. So right now, it's not just people using USDT to go in and out and hedge or whatever it might be, efficiently move money from one place to another. They're using it for global trade and settlement, because banks don't settle 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And so I it's not a good estimate, but I suspect that probably now 10 trillion a year maybe of those transactions are perhaps, it's certainly over a trillion now is related to trade. It's changing fundamental markets. Bitcoin is created an alternative asset class, call it a digital gold, that is creating greater accountability in our monetary policy, right? It's causing everyone to have to be more responsible. We haven't fully seen all of that play out, but I think greater accountability and people being more responsible, I think, is ultimately going to serve us well. And Bitcoin, in some ways, is providing that function in the same way that gold has, historically.
Okay. No, that's
By the way,
awesome.
stocks and bonds. It's everything. NFTs. Just the idea that you have a digital certificate of authenticity, clear chain of title custody. It's fundamentally going to change, a lot of things, most things. AI right now is going to do more in the short term because it's happening faster. Remember, a lot of the things that call it blockchain technology or crypto is affecting requires adoption. And there's a lot of resistance from incumbents. We're getting past that point now. Then there's also the retail component of adoption that's taking a while. AI doesn't require adoption to eat your lunch. AI is whoever uses it first and incorporates it fastest is the beneficiary of it. So AI is changing the landscape, you know, right now in real time, whether you
How
participate or not, it's happening.
how did it all of a sudden appear, AI? Like all of a sudden, like in the last 2 years, is it ChatGPT that made it like so people talk about AI nonstop, or
They brought it to the end user.
okay,
AI and machine learning and these things have been around, obviously, at the big tech companies.
okay, got it.
And so it's been, going back to machine learning now to AI, it's been the thing for a while. But Chat GPT is kind of it. It just was, they call it the revealing, the unveiling of what this can do and putting it in the hands of people. And if you haven't played with it, I mean, I would advise you to drop what you're doing tonight and go play with this thing. It's more important than in 1997 someone or 96 telling you about the importance of email. What it's doing is but just using ChatGPT effectively makes you a superhuman. It gives you superhuman capability, and you'll have it within hours.
I mean, it lets you send emails that can be short about, I mean, it's, God, if I had it when I was in college, holy shit.
Yeah, no, it makes you superhuman like overnight. So if you haven't played with it, I mean, go develop your superpowers tonight, ChatGPT.
That's another clip, but yeah, no, how to develop your superpower, because I'm glad you reminded me, because I haven't opened it in a long time, and I should. Wait, you just made me think of one last. Oh God, it was great. How many unread text messages do you have? That's a question we ask everyone. You have a lot.
If you send me a message, it basically says, "I'm sorry, can't get through them." Let me just take a look.
Really? So you have an automated thing?
Yeah, because too many people were like, they get upset that I never reply. But I'm just looking at this phone. Just SMS, 3,641 missed text messages, signals, about 3,000. Even this phone, no one even has. And
there's still a lot.
My bat phone is already becoming a problem like that. My bat phone, which is meant to be the phone, and anyone that has it can reach me at all times, has 330 unread messages right now. I gave up. I gave up on email 15 years ago. I've given up on text messages. I couldn't keep up with my text messages going back a decade ago now. And now it's like I give up.
So your assistants handle all the stuff?
Well, it's if you need to reach me, and you need to find somebody that is near me, or better yet, get on a plane, come to Puerto Rico, and come find me.
Yep. And how many? Last question. I swear. How many investments do you think you have? Like, how many companies do you think you're invested in?
Well, I asked. How many companies?
Your web is huge. We didn't even go into like Michael Turp, just like your network. I see you on Instagram, and I haven't got into your network, but just trying to give people help.
Hundreds. I mean, it's not thousands. It's in the hundreds.
Hundreds, and yeah. Well, I don't know. There's so much more I could ask you, Brock. Brock Pierce on here. I appreciate you being on. If there's anything else you want, any message you want to send to the Benzinga audience, or whoever else is hearing this in this world, I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You're a guy that gets things done. You're not talk. You're a doer. You're the ultimate doer. I mean, if there was an award for that, you would win it. The America's Doer of the World. I mean, it's crazy how much stuff you've done. Any last thing you want to add or people to know about you or anything?
Well, I mean, it's 2024. Certainly for any Americans, this is an election year. The future is going to happen to you, or it's going to happen with you. Your participation is required if you want it to be the future you want. Otherwise, others are going to make that decision for you. Civic participation. It's like, get involved, be the solution, be the change. And I'll go with like a Nike slogan: just do it.
I don't know how you do it, Brock Pierce, and all you've accomplished these years, and things, ups, downs, building, and everything around. Like the story you just told me about, not starting a DeFi thing, and did you miss it? And then all of a sudden it all collapsed. And it's just really interesting hearing those stories and how you think about things. So I thank you for coming on the Raz Report. I've wanted this for a long time. Hope to meet you in person one of these days. Again, thank you again, Brock Pierce.
The weather is really good right now, so would love to host you. And
I'm gonna talk to my wife about February 18th. We're supposed to be in Naples like that later that week. Maybe we go to Puerto Rico for a few days first. That's what I'm gonna try to fight for right now.
I think that's a great idea.
Yes. All right. Awesome. Thanks again for coming on the Raz Report.
Thank you.